Hey everybody, it's Tom Woods, August 29th, 2011. I wanted to make just a few brief comments on an alternet.org article called 5 Reasons Progressives Should Treat Ron Paul with Extreme Caution. Now, I don't want to be unkind in this video, but I do want to start off by noting that I can think offhand of about 100 reasons progressives ought to have treated Barack Obama with extreme caution. How about the fact that he supported the Wall Street bailouts, which is not something, by the way, that the old-time progressives would have just allowed to pass? How about the fact that he was obviously a member of the bipartisan foreign policy consensus and was not going to make any major changes to U.S. foreign policy? And of course he hasn't. We've got bombings going on in 6 countries. We got the ramping up of the Afghanistan war, and even if he draws down the troops to the extent that he said he would, there'll still be twice as many troops as there were when he entered office. And we've got, not to mention, as I said, the drone attacks, Patriot Act, the surveillance state, the TSA abuses, the continuation of the prohibitionist policy on the drug war, which that's something that, like many Americans, I used to support too before I read something about it. So in other words, he's more or less keeping up the basic bipartisan structure of the state apparatus in Washington that we've seen decade after decade. So be cautious of somebody telling you to be cautious of somebody like Ron Paul, who is in fact a truth teller about all those issues. Unlike Obama, Ron Paul will tell the truth about foreign policy. He'll talk right to conservatives who have basically allowed their movement to degenerate into just jingoistic USA, anti-intellectual nonsense. He'll speak right to them and say, no, this has nothing to do with conservatism, the foreign policy that you're proposing. It is immoral, it's ahistorical, it's counterproductive, and it's bankrupting our country. Okay, well, I don't see a whole lot of progressives in public life who are doing that, who have the name recognition that Ron Paul has. That's my point here. That's why I think they ought to be supporting Ron Paul, even if they don't agree with him on everything. And in fact, most of the issues raised in this article, which I'm not going to go through point by point. You can see on my YouTube channel, Tom Woods TV, that I do go through a lot of articles point by point. I want to keep this as brief as possible. Most of the issues that are raised are completely irrelevant because they deal with issues the president has no authority over. Ron Paul doesn't even want to exercise many of the powers presidents have been exercising because he thinks they're unconstitutional. He's certainly not going to add additional ones. I think that's one thing we can know for certain here. And moreover, there are also issues raised in the article about legislative acts and things that are never going to change, as if that's the major concern right now. The major concern are the issues on which the Democrats and Republicans are completely in agreement. And that's primarily things like the cronyism, the bailouts, the warfare state, the Federal Reserve, the looting of the poor and the middle class on behalf of the politically well-connected and the wealthy. These are issues that basically regular Americans can agree on. I mean, people other than the bipartisan establishment itself see these as being the essential problems. Now, Ron Paul's political philosophy as a libertarian is that violence cannot be initiated against another person unless that person initiated the violence himself. That's what political philosophy aims to answer over and above any other question. Under what circumstances is violence justified? And like it or not, libertarianism places a very high threshold on the initiation of violence. And so if you don't like Ron Paul because he doesn't support this act or that act of government, well, the reason is that he doesn't favor the initiation of violence. That's his moral principle, and he sticks to it even when it means he's going to be smeared, as in this article. The easiest thing in the world would be for him to say, yes, I'm waving incense before all the legislation that you like, so leave me alone. That'd be the easiest thing in the world, but he tells you what he believes anyway. Like, isn't that at least something you can kind of respect? Like, I don't understand why people don't respect that about him, and that you know the principle on which he is basing the things he's saying. Now, then we get a lot of criticisms in this piece about, well, Ron Paul spoke to some group like the Constitution Party, and I don't like some of the people in the Constitution Party. Well, okay, but Ron Paul isn't those people. I haven't found much big problem with the Constitution Party people. I haven't met a lot of them, but none of them are calling for the murder of foreigners, so that puts them ahead of most Democrats, as far as I can see. Most of them are against the Federal Reserve and the bailouts, which is more than I can say for Rachel Maddow. So I think on the progressive scale, they're actually doing okay. But no, we're not supposed to like them because they're not sophisticated enough to be welcomed into certain progressive cocktail parties or something. Now, there have to be progressives out there, and this is why I make the video, who are as appalled as I am at these bizarre priorities. I mean, what kind of twisted, I mean seriously twisted priorities are they? That say, yeah, murder and war propaganda, that's, that's a problem and everything, but, gosh, this guy has different views of various moral issues than I do, that the president has no authority over anyway. So, my gosh, I mean, let's let the murder continue. Let the wars go on. Let the propaganda go on, because I just couldn't possibly go to a cocktail party with some of these people. Well, for one thing, most of his supporters are the most wonderful people you could imagine. The vast majority, 99%, especially all these young kids at universities who are truth tellers, who love Ron Paul because he won't tell the lies and won't speak in bumper sticker slogans and won't talk down to them. Isn't that something a progressive is supposed to like? So, having said all that, let's imagine a Ron Paul presidency. Oh, he couldn't get anything done, they say. I disagree with that, but even if that were true, it would be all worth it for 4 solid years of foreign policy truth-telling. Now, I used to be one of these jingoistic, conservative types, and I still think of myself in some ways as conservative, although politically libertarian. And I bought the whole package, whatever the propagandists tell us, I have to support because that's what it means to be a conservative. I fell for that. Ron Paul could reach a lot of these people who used to be, who are the way I used to be. He could reach them and say, no, this foreign policy is about as far from conservative as you can imagine, and here's why. And here's the real history. Here's what you really need to know about what's going on here. You've been talked down to and treated like a third grader by Democrats and Republicans alike. He could do this for 4 solid years. What possible consideration could be higher than that you couldn't discard for 4 years to say, wait a minute, it's worth it to finally crack through and tell some truth on foreign policy? So I wrote a book with a left progressive named Murray Polner called We Who Dared to Say No to War. And Murray is one of these people who was skeptical of Obama from the start, and I salute him for that, and I salute others who took that lonely stance among progressives. But right now you've lived through Obama, and you see that it really is true, that all we're doing is changing wardens in the prison. Except this time we have a chance to choose a guy who's carrying the key and wants to hand it to us, and to speak truths that are not spoken. Even Dennis Kucinich, who sometimes does and says honorable things, well, he ultimately got on the team and endorsed Obama. Ron Paul, on principle, refused to endorse John McCain. How can you not at least respect this about him? There are no other people in public life who aren't mannequins, plastic men, robots. I mean, really, you open up Mitt Romney's head, the back of his head, you're going to see wiring in there. Same with Joe Biden. They're all this way. Finally, we can choose a real person, and progressives are saying, well, I don't know if I can hang around with some of his friends. They might not. Then don't. Nobody says you have to be buddy-buddy with everybody. But for goodness sake, if a progressive is for anything, a progressive has got to be for telling the truth about foreign policy, stopping the killing overseas, and not throwing hundreds of thousands of your fellow Americans into cages. Isn't that at least what you guys stand for? Then for heaven's sake, get off your high horse and join us.